What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Collegeology Podcast, the podcast where college meets science. I'm your host, Bondi Johnson, and today we're going to talk about hydration, such an important topic, but most people don't really know anything about it, myself included. A few quick things before we get into it. A new episode of Collegeology will be produced every Monday evening, so be sure to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, whatever you like to listen to your podcasts on. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Collegeology Podcast and at The Collegeology on Twitter for more information on topics as well as participate in contests and even be part of the show. All links to social media, studies, and anything else relevant will be in the show notes. Now, let's get into it.
You're listening to the Collegeology Podcast, where college meets science.
Is this gonna be on the exam?
All right, hydration. Are you a human being? Sweet. Well, I think it's well known by now that you can't make it very far in anything you're doing if you aren't hydrated. Water is essential to living, but surprisingly, we don't drink a lot of it. People will claim they don't like the taste of water. Well, plug your nose and start chugging, because today I have on PhD student Holly Clarke to discuss the importance of hydration and the best way to stay hydrated. Holly, hello, and thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
So, will you just go ahead and give us a background of who you are and how you got into hydration?
Yep, sure. So, like you said, my name is Holly Clarke, and I'm originally from England, so I'm in Florida now doing my PhD at the great FSU. I actually came to America about 6 years ago, originally in Alabama, where it's just as hot, just as sticky. I played soccer a lot. I had a great soccer team behind me during my undergrad and then coached during my master's. So, obviously, being very in-depth with my sports, I understood that hydration was extremely important, and especially in the heat with the humidity as well. In order to perform well, the players had to be hydrated. End of story.
Right,
Same as you had to be fueled as well through food. So
Right.
I knew hydration was extremely important and definitely something that I really enjoyed looking into. And it's very surprising as well how many people don't drink enough. So it was just that kind of topic that I wanted to look into more. So I done it during my master's and then kind of just ended up at FSU, but I love it here. And doing something different now in my research, but hydration is still extremely important. So very happy to be here today and talking to you about that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm very excited to have it. People toss around the term hydration very often, whether or not, oh, this dehydrates you, or this is really hydrating, you should be drinking this, you shouldn't be drinking that.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to take a step back. Will you just give us insight of what hydration is in general?
Right, perfect. So I could put it simply and just be like, hydration is drinking water, whatever, or alcohol, whatever you want to do. But ultimately, hydration, simply put, is the ingestion or the consumption of fluids through various avenues, which could be direct sources, such as drinking water from a bottle, but also some foods that have a high water content as well, for example, cucumbers or melons and stuff like that. But ultimately, adequate hydration is needed ultimately to maintain what we call our homeostasis. So in other words, just to keep this good balance within our body and to make sure that our internal environment is primed for all the different physiological functions. So anatomically, our body is made up of 50 to 65% of water anyway. So obviously that's going to be extremely important.
Super important.
And then going on from that, we have all the different organs and tissues in our body. So lean mass or muscle, for example, is 75% water. So obviously very important for muscles.
Yeah.
Adipose tissue, fat tissue is a little bit different, only 5% water there. But then when we're talking about organs, we have our brain. Obviously, probably the most important, especially as a student, the most important organ in our body. That is actually 75% water, just jelly-like water floating around in our skull. And then we also have, for example, our blood, the main constitute of our bodies. And blood is actually 95% water.
Wow.
So that all should just hit home and let people know that obviously water therefore is extremely important in our body, seeing it literally makes our body. So hydration is extremely important, like I said, because it's the principal medium for multiple physiological functions such as cellular homeostasis, metabolism, maintaining that blood volume, thermoregulation as well, so keeping us cool or warm or whatever, and then also physical performance as well. So it's extremely important, it's extremely vital to sustain our hydration.
Yeah, I mean, blood, cool, brain, whatever.
Yeah.
Muscles, 75% of the muscles.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. That's why most people, if they're going for a show or something, they often go for dehydration, just kind of look cut.
Yeah.
And that is the way it. But you have to be careful with that because obviously it can lead to some negative factors as well.
Yeah,
So be very
dehydration
careful.
we know is not good.
Yeah.
So you talk about there's a bunch of foods that have high water content, you can obviously just drink water. I don't necessarily just want to ask you, how do I hydrate? More so, what are some things that I can do to hydrate and make sure that I'm hydrating enough?
Okay, well, obviously, like I said, hydration is extremely important, just as if like your macros are extremely important. So, for example, your carbohydrates and your proteins and your fats. And it's because of that there are guidelines set out there by the National Institute of Health, for example. And at the moment, the daily guidelines are around 3.7 liters of water, whether that be direct or through foods, for males, and then 2.7 liters for females. Now, like I said, ultimately it is, I'd hate to go against what you just said, but it is ultimately drink. Whether it's water or a Powerade or a Gatorade, don't need to drop all these bombs of sponsorships, whatever, but all these different foods as well, melon, strawberries, cucumbers, all like that. Ultimately, just try and get the hydration, the fluid into your body as best as you can. Obviously, just drinking water is the main way of doing that. One of the important things to understand is that we lose water throughout the day through multiple avenues. So, for example, breathing. We lose water while we breathe because we breathe off that water vapor. But also when we go to the bathroom, obviously we're urinating, getting rid of that water. Defecating as well. So these all different things that we go through to lose water. We just need to make sure that we replenish that. So we need to have this kind of water balance, that we like to call it.
Yeah. Make sure the in equals the out, or more
pretty
in
much.
than
It's
out.
the same thing with calories. If you want to stay in a nice balance in terms of maintenance of your weight, it's an energy balance, in and out. It's the same thing with water. If you want to stay hydrated in the nice water balance that we like to talk about, it is water in and water out. So you just need to be aware of your body throughout the day and what you're doing and where you're living, whether you've been out in the hot sun or been active a lot throughout the day. You just need to be aware of that and just make sure you account for it.
Right. Yeah. So, I like how you compared it to calories, in and out. We know people who are more active athletes versus people who aren't.
The door is like there's a ghost in it.
Obviously, the more active you are, the more energy you need, the more calories you need.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's more with hydration, and I want to talk about the differences between, let's say an active individual versus a non-active individual. And I kind of want to start out with hydrating for exercise. So I know there's a lot of thought between or around specifically hydrating before you exercise a certain amount and then making sure you replenish that after. What's your take on drinking adequate amounts before and after?
Yeah, okay, well, first I'm going to just go off with the whole active category. So even if you're not what we call this athlete, you can still be active throughout the day.
Right.
And the main thing that comes into consideration is going to be this thermogenic effect that we have in our body. Obviously, the more active you are, the more metabolically active you are. So your body is producing all this heat internally, and you should know that we have this set temperature we like to stay at, around, 37 degrees Celsius, which is our body's set temperature. If we produce all this heat when we're active, whether in the sun or working out at the gym, our body has to get rid of that heat. So obviously it does that through sweating, like I'm sweating now because I'm a little bit nervous, but same as you in the gym earlier, you're going to be sweating because you're creating all this excess heat that your body needs to get rid of. And ultimately sweat is a disgusting mixture of water and salts. So obviously sweating is a great efficient method of getting rid of that heat. So it's great, but we do have to replenish that sweat. And that is ultimately why the more active you are, the more water you'll have to replace, just because you're losing more water through that sweat.
Right. I don't want to interrupt you because I had another question. But it's for people who might just sweat a lot, right? So if people just sweat, they're not necessarily being active, but they'll just sweat. I know I sweat all the time, but I think there's some people who really is that somebody who might need to be drinking more water? Do they need to be conscious of that?
Completely. That's why their guidelines set, for example, the 3.7 liters and the 2.7 liters, but that is strictly a guideline, and that is like foundational. That is just minimal. You have to still be able to take into account you as an individual. I can't just say, hey, 100 grams of protein is good for this person or whatever, because it depends on the individual completely. Your height, your weight, your age, whether you're active or whether you're sedentary, whether you work in an AC conditioned room or you work out on an oil rig or something like that. So it's very dependent on you as a person. So that's why it's important to educate people like we're doing right now, because reading on Google or Bing, whatever your preferred search engine is, they'll give you a one set answer, and it's like, but does that take into consideration me as an individual?
Everything else, right.
So you need to be aware of your body, and some people do sweat a lot, some people hardly sweat at all. So if you do have excess sweat, you're probably going to need to replace a lot more water.
Right. So let's talk about sports drinks, the Powerade, the Gatorade.
Yep.
It's, they're advertised towards athletes, active individuals.
Definitely.
Is it something, I don't want to just say, is it better than water, but during activity, it's kind of it's the thirst quencher. It's supposed to help keep you hydrated.
Yep.
Am I going to see that big of a difference if I'm drinking that versus just water?
Well, the most important thing I want to hit there is how you asked me what's better, water or sports drinks, and I'm going to turn around and say neither, because they ultimately both serve a purpose that are different to each other. Water serves the purpose of replenishing water loss,
right,
whereas these sports drinks mainly serve the purpose of replenishing the salts that we lose. So like I said, some people are salty sweaters, some people aren't, but the salts that we lose, for example, the sodium, the chloride, and the potassium, the electrolytes ultimately that we need for this neuromuscular communication, they need to be replenished just as much as the water being lost.
Right.
So it's really hard to say which one's better because they are both distinct in my eyes.
Okay.
And usually my go-to in terms of like an athlete who comes to me is like, oh, look, I need to replenish, I need to hydrate properly, I have a competition coming up. Should I down this gallon of Gatorade? I'm like, unless you want to be throwing up behind that bush back there, like no, come on, like let's think about it. You're going to be sweating out both water and those salts. So how about we take a bottle and we mix the two together?
Right.
And that is to me the ultimate mixture right there, like half a Gatorade or half Powerade and then half of water. And that is your perfect concoction right there. That way you're not going to be, overloading with electrolytes, which could lead to lots of detrimental problems on its own. It can cause nausea, for example, vomiting, diarrhea even, which we don't want during a sporting event, especially, or anywhere, really.
Just a sporting event. That's all the time.
We've all seen Bridesmaids, so we know that that's not good anywhere. So, but yeah, too much electrolytes can cause that. It can also cause issues within your brain as well. We've had examples such as hypernatremia, so too much sodium can cause, to pass out and even die in extreme cases, I must hit home.
Right.
But that's the same with water. Too much water can lead to water intoxication. So too much water, again, it'll kind of sit in your belly. You'll hear it kind of jiggling around when you're running or whatever. And again, that dilutes what you do have in your body. So that could lead to hypokalemia, for example, so not enough potassium in your body. And again, which leads to detrimental impacts. So the way I say to combat that is just mix the two. Perfect right there. Yeah. You have your water, you have your Powerade. Now, if you, like I said, you're an extreme salty sweater, then you can take a little bit more. Some people take electrolyte tablets to help. But ultimately, for quote marks, the normal person, ultimately a good combination of the two, both water and Powerade, would be absolutely fine, in my opinion.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Like you said, two different jobs, put them together, you got both things happening.
Perfect.
This question is completely for me. It's something that I convinced myself a little bit ago. I don't do it anymore. I think this is more in high school.
Okay.
I really got into it. I convinced myself if I need to drink, if my goal was some amount of ounces of water a day, it didn't matter when I drank them. So if I drank them, let's say it was 120 ounces in a 2-hour span in the morning. Yeah. Am I good for the day, or how does that work?
I mean, your bladder ultimately, as an organ, has its set point where I think if you hit, I think it's around 450 milliliters of water in your bladder. Okay. You're gonna pee it out. You're gonna want to pee it out because it's gonna be extremely uncomfortable. And your kidneys are constantly working to filter your blood and filter all the stuff that's going through your body. In my personal opinion, I don't know if this is scientifically correct, but if you drink it all in one big go, you're going to be finding yourself in the bathroom for the next couple of hours, urinating that out and becoming, back down to your set point.
Right, okay.
So ultimately, people do say, at the moment, a rule of thumb is a good, around 0.5 fluid ounces to 1 fluid ounce per pound of body weight. That's a good kind of target to hit. But I would separate that throughout the day. For sure. Okay. For sure. Not
Don't
one
just
big
save
go.
it up and be like, well, I drank my water for the day.
Yeah, because a lot of people, it would kind of sit on your belly. And like I said, I've done that before when I've drank a lot and then gone for a run. And it kind of, you can hear it jiggling around your belly. You're like, oh my gosh, what is that?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, no. So it's best, I think, to kind of separate it throughout the day.
Yeah, a completely personal question on mine. I don't know what, made me start thinking that or convince myself of that. But I would do that. I didn't like it. Yeah. I mean, if anybody out there wants to try it, don't. Yeah. I can tell you that much. Yeah. It's not fun. But yeah, I was always curious. Like I said, I don't do that anymore.
It's completely individualized. Like I said, some athletes can deal with that. Some athletes like to down a big bottle of water before they go out for an event, and some athletes like to sip throughout the event. Yeah. It's very individualized, and again, it's just very important about knowing your body, knowing your set point, and knowing where you're comfortable. Okay. Because without comfort, you're obviously not going to perform well anyway. So
Right.
that's the most important thing.
Right, exactly. Well, I think that perfectly sums up the hydration aspect. I want to touch on some myths of hydration
Go for it.
that people like to toss around.
This is going to be
First
interesting.
thing first, I noticed you have a cup of coffee.
I do,
We all
yes.
know I'm a coffee lover. Is it true that coffee dehydrates you?
Okay, well, I'm going to shoot you this question. When
Okay.
you make your coffee in the morning, what is the main constitute of your coffee?
That would be water.
It would be water. Okay, we make coffee, coffee granules, whatever. The vast proportion of that drink that you're drinking is water. So please don't turn around to me and say that coffee is making you dehydrated, because that, in my opinion, is not true. Now, caffeine has been shown to have what we call a diuretic effect, and that is the kind of impact it has on your body where it makes you want to go to the bathroom. Same as when you drink alcohol has a diuretic effect. You find yourself breaking the seal and you go into the bathroom. You know, when you're
exactly.
trying to party and you're the first one in there.
Trying to party.
It's the same thing with caffeine. It
Yeah.
has that diuretic effect, so it makes you feel like you need to go to the bathroom a lot more. And I feel like what people have done is they've put those two together, so they've assumed that coffee causes dehydration.
Right.
That isn't necessarily the case. It has a minor diuretic effect, but research has been shown in different meta-analyses that has shown that really it doesn't have a huge impact on your total body water content.
Right.
And if you're taking it as kind of like you take your coffee in the morning and then go work out, it doesn't have any impact really in terms of your water content during your workout.
Okay.
So unless you're drinking coffee as your only drink throughout the day, then I think you're fine. I really don't think it causes dehydration at all.
Okay.
It just depends on your definition of dehydration.
Yeah, that's good to know. That I mean, so many people say that, and I even thought that for a while, but it makes complete sense when you ask the
Yeah.
question, what is coffee? Well, 98 to 99% water.
Exactly.
How is it that would be? Like you said, it's kind of like balancing the in with the out, and so with that amount of water, even with the diuretic
Yeah.
effects of caffeine,
Yeah.
you're still getting all that water
Ultimately,
with that.
you are. It's that indirect effect that people are like, oh, so it must cause dehydration. Well, if you're only drinking coffee, then you only have yourself to blame anyway. Of course,
Right.
you're gonna, if you go into the bathroom a lot, you're emptying your bladder, you're emptying your system of water, so you're gonna get dehydrated eventually. So just be smart, have your coffee in the morning. If you go to the bathroom, that's fine, but then you just drink water later on, you'll be fine. Like,
Exactly.
there's not a direct worrying impact there in terms of caffeine and
Perfect.
dehydration.
So many people relieved by that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop drinking my coffee.
Yeah,
I love my coffee.
I think people wouldn't care either way. I'm going to skip right over. I had 8 glasses of water a day, 8-ounce glasses of water. That used to be the typical. I think you'd already touched on the recommendation of the 3.7 and 2.7
Yeah,
liters
the only
per
thing
day.
I'd say about that is the 8 glasses of water a day is the same as people saying, the 5 portions of fruit or veg, or an apple a day makes the doctor, what is it? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. There you go. Which is very expensive, so that's a good choice. But again, like I said, it's very foundational. It's just for those people who don't really know. They're not educated. That's a really bad word, but they haven't got the sufficient knowledge. But for example, to hit it home, someone going to run their marathon in a day, 8 glasses of water would not be enough for that person during the day. They'll be dehydrated. So it's very individualized. Just make sure you're hitting, those guidelines, and then accounting for any of the excess that you might go through as well.
Okay.
So,
Just always reach the baseline.
Yeah, definitely.
That's perfect. So I actually love this next thing, coconut water. I want to talk about coconut water. I love coconut water, but you definitely hear that coconut water. The first thing anybody ever says about coconut water is, oh, it's so hydrating. And I'm pretty sure they have it right on the container, like super hydrating, like ultra hydrating. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, it's not. But how hydrating is it, let's say, compared to water, regular water? Okay,
well, I like to say that Dr. Pepper is extremely hydrating after a workout. Like, I crave fizzy drinks after my workouts. It's, again, that's individual taste in my perspective. And I must admit, I did have a look at a little bit of the research, and the scientific evidence behind coconut water is very scarce. In my opinion, it has its positives in that coconut water, hey, it's natural. It's a natural source of water.
Right.
And that the fact that it's obviously within that coconut has the natural sugars as well. It also has a very high concentration of potassium, which is a good electrolyte.
Of course.
But that's also found in Powerade and Gatorade.
Right.
But also because it's, again, natural, it has low fat, low cholesterol, and low calories. So that's all great things that makes this coconut water great to have.
Yeah.
However, whether it's better than water or better than Powerade, better than Gatorade, again, that's down to your personal opinion. I feel like if you can afford to go out and buy a $4 bottle of coconut water and you like the taste, because I hate the taste of coconut water, but whatever, then you can go do that. But ultimately, you know, the sugars, whether they're natural or like produced in this Powerade or Gatorade, they're gonna do their jobs ultimately. And whether it hydrates you more, that's a very subjective thing to ask. How do you really determine whether I'm hydrated or they're hydrated or this person's hydrated or not? Unless you want to go ahead and take a blood sample right then and look at osmolality and, you know, plasma volume, blood volume and stuff like that. But I don't want to go and buy coconut water and have a blood draw at the same time. Like, no, like, you can't imagine that on a bottle.
Yeah,
like,
no, exactly.
Oh, there's one bottle of coconut water and get a free blood draw at the same time.
Free blood
like,
draw, yeah.
No, I just want to drink something so I'm ready for my sport. Like, ultimately, like I said, I don't think there is any king of hydration.
Okay.
I feel like it's the same as saying what's better for protein synthesis, animal or plant protein. You know, what's better? It's like, well, ultimately they serve their purpose. They both serve their purpose of providing the amino acids for proteins. So that's the same thing with coconut water. Coconut water is great. It has that fluid in it. It has those natural sugars. It has that potassium. But it's expensive, probably expensive. I probably wouldn't be buying it when Powerade is 88 cents at Walmart. But then, like I said, Powerade has potassium, but it also has sodium, you know, and everything else with the sugars. And yes, Powerade and that sugar in there, that's going to cause issues if you drink a lot of that. But to be honest, if you drink a lot of coconut water, you'll probably see issues too.
Yeah, and it brings it back to what you just said, Powerade or Gatorade, split it half and half with water, and you're cutting the sugar content half as well. So
exactly, and you get a lot of these zero sugar added nowadays. So
exactly,
you know, ultimately, coconut water is great because it's natural, and we should be feeding our bodies more with natural sources. However, I don't think it means that we should all up our budget and go and buy coconut water, because I'm personally just more interested in paying rent, let alone buying coconut water. So, you know, I don't think it puts anybody at an advantage if they drink coconut water.
The next thing I'm talking about too is something I also was a firm believer in, and I mean, in high school, this is kind of what got me into nutrition in the first place. Is I would just read these things and find out what people would claim to be absolute essentials for health, and one of those was drinking first thing in the morning. The minute your feet touch the floor, you should drink within like a minute of getting out of your bed. And so I would have a glass of water next to my bed ready for myself when I woke up in the morning. I did that for so long, and again, a lot of these things I don't do anymore, but can you talk about that it being essential, whether or not it is essential or
definitely. I mean, we often hear about how, you know, when we're asleep, we're ultimately fasting, so we don't eat. I mean, you shouldn't eat while you're asleep. If you're a sleep eater or whatever, then that's kind of brilliant. But I mean, you wake up and you're in a fasted state, which is why people will say breakfast is extremely important, because then, you know, you make sure your hormones are at the correct levels and you're feeding your body ready for the day, because you haven't been eating for 8-10 hours, whatever. And it's the very same thing with hydration, in that when you're sleeping, I haven't heard of anyone sleep drinking, so usually when you're sleeping, you're not drinking, so your body goes through a long period, about 8 to 10 hours, of which you're not supplying your body with water. And we do sweat when we sleep, and you should be breathing while you're sleeping, so we are losing water while we sleep. So that is why it's important to drink in the morning, because ultimately you're just getting your body prepared for the day, and you're replenishing what we haven't had for a long time, about 8 to 10 hours. Now, a lot of the myths I've heard is how, you know, drinking ice cold water is great for, you know, boost the immune system or lose weight. And there's a lot of contradictive arguments on that. And my mum always told me that if you had problems going to the bathroom in the morning, I think we all know what that means, drinking a glass of cold water will help, you know, move your system along nicely. And from personal experience, yes, it does help your your system move quickly. But ultimately, you can't say that ice cold water can affect fat metabolism. I mean, ultimately, some people say that the reason behind that is you drink cold water that makes your internal temperature colder, so your body works hard to warm it up. So in turn, you're burning fat to make heat or whatever. But that is a long way, and that is, maybe 1 calorie, 2 calories. So to say that's going to burn fat, then I can't really get on board with that. Ultimately, I'm just saying, and I would say that just as with fasting with food, you haven't eaten throughout the night, you haven't drunk anything during the night either. So you're probably going to wake up dehydrated. So if you want to start the day well, thinking clearly, ready to attack the day, then yeah, you should drink when you wake up.
Right.
And a glass of water would do that perfectly.
Yeah. With all the talk of hydration, obviously it's important to understand whether or not you know whether or not you are hydrated or not.
Yep.
And we all know those charts that are in the bathrooms right above the toilet that have the different colors saying, here's your level of hydration.
Are you lemonade or are you apple juice?
Yeah,
right? What are you today?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's that scary brown one. I'm like, God, I hope I never see that.
There's something different wrong with you if you have that one going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how accurate is that chart? Is that something you should stick to? Is urine color the best analysis of hydration, or how do I know?
Yeah, well, I mean, usually if you look at research, if you're looking at in-home methods or field methods of looking at hydration status, urine color is just extremely easy to use. And I like to, wake up and all you have to do is look in your toilet bowl and see whether it's, a light color or a dark color. It's not going to be like, oh, I have, 1.1 urine osmolality or urine specific gravity. Like, you can't look at it and tell that. The color is mainly pertaining to how concentrated your urine is.
Right.
So if my kidneys are working really hard to hold on to as much water as possible, in other words, I'm dehydrated, the urine that you urinate is going to be a very dark color because it's concentrated. There's not a lot of water content. It's more, all these different other molecules and stuff like that. So that's why you have dark color urine. That's why we say that's you're dehydrated, because your kidney is holding on to as much water as possible.
Okay.
However, when you have that lighter color, that lemonade kind of color, your kidneys don't have to worry about holding on to excess water, so it just lets you urinate water from your system and it becomes a lot more dilute, so you see that lighter color.
Right. So
it's a very good way of just seeing whether or not, again, subjectively you're hydrated or not. Urine smell can also play a role in it. It's important to understand that some foods can change the color of your urine, so you need to be aware of that as well.
Right.
But just for a go-to, like if you wake up and you kind of want to see where you're at, yeah, definitely have a look at your urine. It's the same thing, as disgusting as this sounds, but it's the same thing as looking at your feces.
Yeah.
That can tell a lot about your internal and how your internal environment is working, whether you need to eat a bit more fiber or not, for example. And again, if you want to go to the doctor's office and have a urine analysis, they can tell if you have protein or sugars or even blood in your urine, which tells a lot about your system. But ultimately, for an easy go-to way of telling, am I hydrated, am I dehydrated, just in general, is looking at your urine color.
Should I be striving for clear, or can it be yellow to any degree?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I feel like it's very hard to be very clear, and otherwise I'd be urinating throughout the night. I'd rather sleep peacefully and wake up maybe like minimally dehydrated and then just address that in the morning.
Right.
Ultimately, you have time. If you wake up and you're dehydrated, which is the normality, like really people usually wake up dehydrated, just have your water throughout the day and you've solved it. Simple as that.
Right, exactly.
Your body's not going to keel over and die just because you had your first pee in the morning and you're dehydrated. Like, you're not going to stand up and pass out. No, just make sure you do drink in the morning if you happen to be dehydrated.
Yeah, exactly.
We've all been there. We've all had a crazy night out, drank way too much, alcohol, and not balanced that with water. The next morning we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so dehydrated. And then throughout the day you drink your Powerades, your Gatorades, and your water, and you feel fine.
And you start feeling
Same
better.
thing.
Everything.
Yeah. Random fact with that, actually, really quite interesting, I found when I was researching. The reason you have your headaches is because your brain actually shrinks in size, in volume, because like I said, your brain is 75% water.
Yeah.
So when you become dehydrated, your brain can actually shrink in size.
Oh, wow.
And that's why we have those headaches, because there's a lot more pressure and them synapses can't fire as well, so we tend to have headaches because our brain is dehydrated. Not just our body, but our brain. Yeah, so it's very interesting to see. Obviously not substantially, but enough to cause the headache.
Right, exactly.
So that's to me, that was really interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't look a lot into it, but I just saw the pictures of the scans, and it was really interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on. I
You're
think
more than
that
welcome.
we murdered it. People should now have a clear idea of hydration.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Like I said, I'm usually pretty well versed in these topics that I talk about. today these were all genuine questions because hydration is something that, I don't know a lot about and not a lot of people know about. So,
well, I'd just like to say, hydration, I've been told a lot in the past how there's a lot of research already done on it. We know the importance of hydration. What is the point of talking about it? But in my eyes, until everybody is drinking the amount they should be, then we can stop talking about it. But at the moment, no one is drinking the recommended amounts. You'll be very surprised at how little you're actually drinking throughout the day. And it is extremely important, and it has a lot of physiological effects on the body. Just as carbohydrates do, just as fats do, just as protein does. So it's an extremely important topic, especially with youngsters as well. They need to understand that going to school with a bottle of Powerade probably isn't great for them. They need to have that water as well. And it's just an important topic that we don't talk a lot about, and some people just kind of shove it to the side and they think, I drink plenty. It's like, well, do you though? Do you really drink plenty? And it's very easy to combat. We're very lucky to live in a society where we have access to water that we can drink, or products and, in bottles or whatnot. So, they say it's not a topic we should talk about, but it is. And, it's very important. Shouldn't shove it to the side. Just drink some water throughout the day and you'll be fine. But it's just as important, for example, as, in my eyes, as the carbohydrates and the fats and everything else that your body is made out of.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on. That was awesome.
So welcome.
Had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
That's a wrap for today. I hope you guys learned some things and had fun along the way. Remember to rate and review the podcast if you liked it to help me out. And keep an eye out for the next episode, which will be out on Monday night. You've been listening to the Collegeology Podcast, where college meets science. Until next time.